Hello there. I want to talk about what I do, the technique I use to sharpen hand tools. And there's a couple of different approaches that I take. One of the approaches I'll take is using oil stones. And the reason I have differing ways that I sharpen, if you pay attention to my Mike Baker channel, which should be in the the thing on the right of my homepage on this channel, where it's like recommended sites or whatever. I forget what it's called, but I got both of my other channels right there to the right, and you can click on it and go to them from the main page of this YouTube channel. But the reason that I do that, if you watch my other channel where I deal more with straight razors, I like different types of edges on my straight razors, and there's a difference in the way sharpening feels on different media, and sometimes I'm in the mood for one thing, sometimes I'm in the mood for other. But you could just pick one. If you're not like that, most people aren't, but like I say, I hone straight razors, and I like different feels, the feel of different edges when I'm honing on them, and also how they feel on my face. And I've gotten to a point where, I enjoy the process of honing and sharpening on different types of media. And so that's one of the reasons that, if I was just a woodworker, I'd just pick one, but I have the options, so I use them because I enjoy it as well. Sharpening should not be a tedious task. It should be something that you enjoy. But anyway, either way, you better learn to do it because you need sharp tools to work wood. So one of the options that I use, this is a newer stone to me, but I used a similar stone before, but this is a Norton coarse and fine India. Now, before I had this stone, I used a medium India stone. But now a coarse and a fine, and then what I would do is I would go to a soft Arkansas, and then on to a black Arkansas. That puts a slamming edge on a tool. And it's a different way of doing things, kind of an old school way. And I really like that a lot. And when I have time, then I tend to do that. But if I go out, and so let me move these out of the way, and I'll show you the main way that I sharpen for woodworking. Let me set these to the side. Most of the time I take a more modern approach to sharpening. What I do is this is what I bring out to the bench, unless it's winter time, and then I might come inside to sharpen, or I would take one of these and let me show you what I got. This is a combination diamond plate, just like that Norton combination coarse and fine. It's got a 400 grit on one side and a 1000 grit on the other side. In the wintertime, when it's cold outside and I'm using water, which is what I use even on my oil stones, okay, if I took this out to the bench, alright, and used water on it, it would soak up some of the water. And if it froze while I was outside, because I do work in like 30-degree weather, if you're moving, you'll warm up. It's not a big deal. But this might bust and crack if it freezes. So I wouldn't take this out to the bench. What I would do is I would just come off this 1000 and go to a pasted strop. And it would be pasted with this polishing compound. It's green polishing compound from Harbor Freight. This is chromium oxide, and I call it paste all the time. I say a pasted strop, but actually this is a crayon. But I use a more refined paste for my straight razors, and so I will say paste when I really mean crayon on this channel. But you need a small strop. All this is a block of leather, a block of wood with some leather glued to it, and this compound pasted on it. The black that you see there are particles and bits of metal that the paste polished off of the edges of my tools. But what I would do is first you start on the 400. Now I want to show you a little bit about the edge. I'm sharpening this chisel here. If you look at the edge on this, you see that this bevel is pretty polished all the way down. When you buy a chisel, this edge is ground with a grinding wheel, a 6 or 8 inch grinding wheel. And what you'll have is you'll have a little hollow here in the center. And when you set the tool on the sharpening media, you can press down on it and it'll sit flat. You can feel it kind of click. And what you end up doing is polishing like this part, and that hollow stays there, and it makes it a lot easier to sharpen the chisel. Sooner or later it'll polish up like this one, and you'll have to regrind it if you want to use that technique. I don't possess a grinding wheel, so I polished the whole flat. Matter of fact, I flatten that flat out purposely when I first get the tools. A lot of times now I've gone into the habit of using if I get one that's new and it's got that hollow there, I just use that hollow till it goes away. But doing it this way means that it takes a little bit longer to sharpen it, because you're not just polishing this edge and this edge, but you're polishing that whole face. So it takes longer, but not that much longer if you know what it is that you're doing. So I just want to get that out of the way so that you'll understand the mechanics of what's going on. What I would do, I'm going to use some water to initially sharpen a tool. You would lay your tool down like this and press down, and trust me, you can feel, I can even feel that whole bevel. I know and can feel that is sitting where I need it to sit. You want to take and lay it like that. You want to grab the tool here, and once you get that angle, what you want to do is you want to move your finger away from this. Hold on a minute. Excuse me, I had a bit of an interruption. You want to lay it on the stone, lean it forward until you find that angle, and you can. It'll kind of lock into place. You want to grab the chisel here. If you grab it back here, then that chisel, if you grab it back here, the chisel will move, and you won't be sharpening on that primary bevel all the time. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this kind of this way because it suits the angle there. But you want to lock it down. You want to grab the chisel back here, and you want to take this finger, you want to move it a little bit away from this stone, because trust me, the stone might feel smooth, but if it's abrading the edge of this tool, it's going to abrade the edge of your finger and take some skin with it. So get it where you want it, pull back, and then instead of moving your arms, what you want to do is you want to kind of sway. And you don't have to go very fast. And this method, you see that if you looked at those oil stones, they were only 2 inches wide. This is like a 3-inch wide stone. You don't have to have a really wide stone with this method. Now you see my arms are locked. They're not moving. My body is moving. But you don't need a very large stone, a very wide stone with this method, because you see the angle the chisel is at? And what I'm doing is I'm moving along this stone. And what I want to do is I want to create a small burr on the back edge of this chisel. And once I have that, and it will take a particular amount of time, and don't get worried about how much time that is. Just work until you get that burr. And you can move the edge. See how I'm kind of moving this edge along this? Well, with the diamond plate it doesn't matter, but with a water stone or an oil stone or any other kind of stone, you want to kind of use, beautiful, and I can feel the wire edge with my thumbnail. You want to use all of the stone. Now, I've seen people say, well, leave the burr on until you get to your high grit stone. I don't. I take the stone, let me move it more to the edge so that the chisel will clear, the handle will clear. Lay it flat on the hone. And you can draw the burr off like that, but what I tend to do a lot of times is take and hold it flat like this, because what you want to do, this is a part of it. If you look at this chisel, you'll see that this part of the back of this chisel is shiny. Why? Well, I want this back to be flat, but I particularly want this area to be flat because you're sharpening something. You're bringing two edges together to a fine point. And that means you have to work on this side too. It doesn't need as much. You're just trying to keep it flat and polish it a bit. And so now I got a little bit of the burr left. So what I'll do is like I say, a lot of times people wait for the last stone to do this. You can if you want. I kind of tend to remove it as I go along. So that side is done. I got that burr. Because the reason I do it that way is because if you continue to hone, the burr gets bigger and bigger and bigger. The bigger the burr, the harder of a time you're going to have getting it off. And so I prefer to deal with it after each progression. That way it's small and not difficult for me to remove. So now we've gone to the 400. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to lay that like this, and I'm going to lock my arms. And I'm going to sway my body side to side. Now this is like an initial sharpening. Once you get the edge sharp, as long as you don't damage it and don't wait until the edge is completely dull, it shouldn't take that long to sharpen it after that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that toward the end of the video here. But the diamonds, a diamond stone makes quick work of things, and it's, as long as you keep it dry once you're done so it doesn't rust, you can end up with a hone that will last and work a long time. So now what I'm going to do, and I'm feeling for a burr, and I can't feel one. That doesn't mean you don't have a very microscopic one, but chances are good that I don't. And I'm going to dry this stone. What I would do, you see there's a little bit of water in there. I would set this off to the side and let that dry out before I put that back in the holder. Now what I would do is I would move to this stone to polish. And you could just buy this stone and have 1,000 on this side and 6,000 on it. And this stone would probably do everything you need, particularly if you're using newer chisels that don't need any kind of correction or anything. Everything I've got is second hand, and a lot of them need work. So, but if you were using newer tools that don't need any correction at the bevel, this stone and a pasted strop, you could pretty much do anything you need. Now, lay that down. See how I had to pull that finger up? If you notice it riding on the stone, get it up off the stone. Because I promise you, you'll only want to do that one time. And you'll realize that that's not the way to go. But you're just rocking side to side and moving the tool. You're locking your hands like this, rocking side to side. See how well that polishes? Now I'm going to check. There's no burr on that. So the final stage for me, now I have a big strop. It's about that long and about that wide, 4 inches wide. And I just lock it down in my bench vise out back on my workbench so that I can use, because I like to use a bit of pressure when I strop. Actually, wait a minute. One thing we forgot to do. Just like with everything else, I want to polish that back, and I'm keeping it flat. I'm not raising it up at all and not tilting it back. I'm keeping this flat to the stone. I see any burr, feel any burr. And then I would just go to the pasted strop, get that angle. You don't have to have the exact, you can have just a little bit less. The leather will give. But you want to get that angle as best you can. And what I do is lay the palm of my hand on top of this finger here and just, with a pulling motion. Don't go this way or you'll cut your strop. And you don't have to have speed like I'm doing. About 30, 40, 50 times depending on what you want. But it's shaving. That will do anything I need it to do in wood. It'll take some time to learn that technique. During learning, you're going to accidentally move your hands a little bit. You want to remember to lock them and just learn to sway back and forth and keep that angle on the hone, and you'll be golden. And that's sharpening for woodworking tools. And this technique works. I can have a plain blade that's wider than this stone. It doesn't make any difference because I'm coming at it at an angle like that. I can sharpen anything, any size I need, even on like a narrow stone like that. For maintenance during work, what I would do depends on the steel. I like the older, softer steels as opposed to like the modern Japanese steels or some of the PMB11 or whatever it is, or the powdered steel, the super steels and stuff that a lot of the more expensive modern chisels are being made out of. I just like the old, simple steels. They sharpen fast. They don't hold an edge as long, but you can keep them going. If you stop every 20 minutes or a half hour and give it 30 strokes on that and go right back to work, you can keep a chisel sharp for a long time. And 30 strokes is less than 30 seconds depending on how fast you're moving on that. But even if it took you a minute, stopping every 20 or 30 minutes and spending a minute on this to bring the edge back up, because what it is you're stopping before you allow the edge to get super, super dull, and then you're just refreshing it on this. It works really well. If you look at some of my older videos, I built a bench. That was the first thing I did, was a bench build. The one that I'm working on now, outside, I built that bench, and I used Harbor Freight and Aldi's chisels to build that bench. And people say they won't hold an edge. Stop every 20 or 30 minutes and hit it on that. Okay, I built that bench out of it. I didn't have to stop and do all this rehoning all the time. I just was smart in how I used this. It worked just fine. Depends what you want. Nice tools are nice, but in my opinion, if that's an old Marples, that's a nice tool. So, you know, that's subjective as well a lot of times. But anyway, that's the way to keep going. And then if you need to, if this ain't doing it, go back to this stone and polish it a bit, and then come to this. If that ain't doing it, go to the 1K. Actually, I would go to the diamond stone, but if you're just using this stone, go back to the 1K. Chances are you could go right to the 1K and then flip over here and go to that pasted. And 9 times out of 10, unless you really buggered that edge up, you'll have an edge back pretty quick. One other thing before I forget. All your stones, whether we're talking about water stones or oil stones, have to be kept flat. Alright, water stones are easy to keep flat. Oil stones don't dish anywhere near as quickly, but when they do dish, they are a pain in the rear end to flatten. So you want to watch and make sure that, you know, you're going to end up probably trying to flatten it a bit every 6 months or so. And it'll be lightly out, and it'll go fairly easy for you if you catch it when it's lightly out. But with a water stone, I'm going to wash this off. You can't see my sink, I don't think. But I'm going to wash that off. And I'm going to take the 400 diamond plate that I use for sharpening, initial sharpening. And either before I use it or after I get done for the day, or if it seems to be getting dish during the day, whenever I think it needs it, that's as simple as it gets. And that stone is flat and ready to hone again. Alright, bless you. Thanks for watching.